The money on the table was astronomical, and absolutely none of it was headed toward the WTA. The corporate giants weren't just chasing Eala. They were effectively ghosting the entire league. A 19-year-old Filipina prodigy had suddenly become more commercially lethal than a professional circuit built over 5 decades. She didn't do it by stacking up Grand Slam trophies or clutching the #1 ranking. She did it with something the old guard fears most: raw, uncontainable, cultural charisma. When the financial leaks finally hit the press, the tennis establishment didn't just blink. It stopped breathing. Because this wasn't just another sponsorship headline, it was a coup. A silent corporate revolution wearing a tennis skirt, and the WTA never even checked the forecast. Don't click away, because by the time this is over, you'll see why the fiercest battle in women's tennis isn't being fought on clay or grass. History shows us a rare breed of athlete who outgrows the game before the game even knows what hit them. Ali was one. Serena was another. And right now, whether the suit's in charge like it or not, Eala is crashing that exclusive club on a massive scale that has executives from Manila to Manhattan shredding their old marketing playbooks in a panic. Forged in the Philippines, sharpened by relentless discipline, and polished at the Rafa Nadal Academy in Mallorca, she brought a weapon to the tour that no coaching manual can teach. She brought a narrative, a genuine cross-border saga, that hooked billions of hearts across Southeast Asia, Europe, and the Americas all at once. It was the perfect storm: underdog roots, elite European training, and a magnetic vibe that marketing VPs privately call a cultural unicorn. And the big money spotted it way before the official rankings even had a clue. While she was still grinding through qualifiers, her digital footprint was already stomping on veterans who had 10 times the trophies. Her Instagram engagement stats weren't just good for a tennis player. They were astronomical for any athlete in any sport on any continent. We are talking about authentic connection, real emotional equity, not just bots. The numbers were so high that data analysts assumed it was a glitch and double-checked the spreadsheets. Sportswear titans, Swiss watchmakers, tech moguls, and telecom giants with a stranglehold on the Asian market, everyone wanted a piece. Interest. No, this was a bidding war. Casual chats behind closed doors quickly morphed into aggressive, 9-figure negotiations. And here's the kicker: none of these deals were routed through the WTA's official pipelines. They went straight to Eala's camp. That bypass is critical because the association is still running on a dinosaur operating system, centralized pools, official partners, and revenue structures designed to feed the collective, not the star. That model worked fine in the 90s, but we are living in a world where one kid with a smartphone commands more eyeballs than the entire league she plays in. Eala represented the glitch in their matrix, the variable they never bothered to calculate. A player whose personal brand gravity was so intense, it was ripping sponsors right out of the tour's orbit. She didn't do it through scandal or beefs. She did it by vibrating on a frequency the institutional voice just can't match. The locker room gossip has shifted from match points to market shares. Rival agents are starting to get the bad news, budgets are being frozen and reallocated elsewhere. Tournament sponsors are leaving renewal contracts on read. The cash isn't vanishing from the sport folks. It is funneling into a single massive black hole of influence. And that point has a name. That point has a killer, two-handed backhand, and she is barely warming up. Ask yourself this: when was the last time a teenager forced billion-dollar conglomerates to torch their entire sports marketing strategy? Because that reality is here. The numbers have leaked, and there is no putting the genie back in the bottle. The dollar amounts floating around her private contract negotiations aren't just nice bonuses. These aren't the scrappy endorsement deals usually thrown at players fighting to crack the top 10. The confidential term sheets circulating right now tell a very different story. One of those financial tier usually locked away for multi-time Grand Slam legends, now being handed to a rising star still climbing the ladder. Insiders suggest that when you stack these multi-year partnership offers, the total valuation doesn't stop at millions. It starts looking at the billions over the lifetime of the deals. Telecommunications behemoth with deep roots in Southeast Asia is rumored to be leading the pack. Major apparel brands, realizing she holds the keys to one of the fastest growing consumer markets on earth, are throwing blank checks at her. Silicon Valley tech firms see her as the authentic voice of the future and view her as absolutely irreplaceable. But it is not just the pile of cash that is shocking, it is the blueprint. They aren't asking how she fits into the tennis world's little boxes. They are constructing entirely bespoke empires: creative collaborations, equity stakes, and long-term ambassadorships that treat her like a global media conglomerate, not just an athlete endorsing a shoe. A leading market shark laid it all out for the trade press, dropping the polite facade for a dose of brutal honesty. Major brands had basically figured out that the crowd and that electric bond Eala created could be tapped much faster by bypassing the league entirely. The tour's official ad machine, while okay for the general public, was totally useless for hitting the die-hard, culturally specific tribes that worshipped Eala. For the association, this epiphany was a financial ticking time bomb. When corporate giants funnel their cash straight to the stars instead of the organization, the whole house of cards loses leverage. Lesser-known athletes vanish from the spotlight. Funding for smaller events dries up like a puddle in a drought. The whole ecosystem starts to crack. But here's the twist that really turned the knife. Eala wasn't plotting a mutiny here. She wasn't trying to go to war with the powers that be. Her agents were just pouncing on insane demand with a ruthless, smart game plan. Call it capitalism, not a revolt. But for the tour, the fallout was just as devastating. In the back rooms, the suits running the show were sweating through some very awkward meetings. How do you keep sponsors interested when one of your own players is a hotter ticket than the entire league combined? How do you patch up a business model from the pre-digital age to handle a superstar whose Instagram dwarfs your global reach? We weren't dealing with boardroom what-ifs anymore. This crisis demanded answers yesterday, and the tour, for reasons about to get blasted all over the news, was dragging its feet. The billion-dollar mystery wasn't about whether Eala earned that paycheck. That was a given. The real nightmare keeping executives up at night was far darker. Had the organization already fumbled the narrative? And if so, could they ever snatch it back? Radio silence during a PR meltdown isn't just quiet, it screams. As the bidding war for Alex Eala heated up and the media started connecting the dots, the official channels went totally dark. Zero formal comments, not a shred of strategic spin, and no attempt to steer the ship. Just dead air exactly when they needed to take charge. And that silence, it was a fatal error. In today's 24/7 news cycle, if you don't write your own headline, you don't just leave a blank page. You basically pass the mic to your critics and let them roast you. Reporters, data geeks, global fan forums, and rival leagues all jumped in to spin the yarn while the tour stayed mute. And let me tell you, the picture they painted wasn't pretty. They sketched out a dinosaur of an organization blindsided by a trend that had been staring them in the face for ages. To be fair, the red tape causing this lag was a tangled up mess. You have got the league juggling laws in a dozen countries trying to please athletes, organizers, TV networks, and old school sponsors all at once. Moving that beast takes time. Usually that slow pace means they are being careful and responsible. But Eala's meteoric rise was a freak event. They needed to move at light speed. They had to evolve instantly, yet they were stuck in neutral. In the meantime, wary backers started having secret talks that would have been unthinkable just a few months prior. Companies that had been loyal partners for years suddenly started checking the receipts and asking the hard questions. Was slapping a logo on a court wall actually hitting the target demographic anymore? Or had the eyes shifted to the players, the drama, and the viral moments leaving the official channels in the dust? The data coming back was enough to give the tour bosses sleepless nights. The numbers on the screen do not lie, and they do not bargain. Viewer stats do not care about history, and every single audit pointed to the same brutal truth. The league's power to serve up the premium crowds had tanked. While Eala's personal brand went supernova, the rest of the locker room started feeling the chill. Negotiations for their own endorsements were taking a nasty turn. Corporate partners who used to flaunt their WTA ties like a badge of honor are suddenly changing their tune, burying the relationship under a mountain of new caveats. That gold standard seal of approval, which once sent a player's market value into the stratosphere, was rapidly losing its magnetic grip. Seasoned veterans whispering off the record to reporters were seething with a genuine simmering frustration. They had poured their blood and sweat into building the league's collective reputation over decades. Watching leadership stay silent while that legacy crumbled felt like a betrayal of the highest order to many in the locker room. And still, radio silence. The WTA's refusal to speak wasn't just a PR blunder, it was negligence. It flashed a giant neon warning sign to every sponsor: this organization is steering the ship without a captain or a map. For investors hunting for sharp, future-proof allies, that kind of hesitation is a total deal-breaker. In the cutthroat world of high-stakes marketing, that silence screamed louder than any press release. Every 24 hours of hush-hush was burning cash, and the bill was getting astronomical. When big money starts heading for the exits, they never use the word withdrawal. That's too messy. They hide behind buzzwords like portfolio optimization or strategic shifts, but don't be fooled, the message is brutal. The cash is fleeing. And in the world of women's tennis, it was sprinting out the door at breakneck speed. You won't see fireworks or press conferences marking the end. Corporate erosion is a silent killer. It's the contract that quietly expires the renewal meeting that gets indefinitely postponed. It's the deal that eventually gets signed, but for pennies on the dollar compared to the glory days. Slowly, and then all at once, the financial bedrock started to crack wide open. Heavy hitters began diverting massive chunks of their budgets away from the league and straight to the stars. Why sponsor the stage when you can sponsor the superstar standing on it? The money was moving to individual icons. The math behind these moves was cold hard and undeniably logical from a business standpoint. Engagement numbers for icons like Eala were crushing the league's stats, leaving the tour in the dust. If you're a brand chasing clicks and eyeballs, the choice was practically made for you. The impact hit the tournament circuit like a shockwave. Smaller events desperate for sponsorship cash to survive suddenly found themselves in a financial stranglehold. Even the conversations about prize pools turned into tense, complex standoffs. The support system for the hundreds of grinders who make the tour work began to buckle under the strain. These aren't the billionaires, they're the backbone of the sport, and they were feeling the heat. This ugly side of the story rarely made it to the front page. Everyone was too busy obsessing over Eala's meteoric rise to notice the collateral damage. But the real story was the price paid by the players left in her commercial shadow. A rank-and-file pro fighting in the qualifiers doesn't see a dime of Eala's mega deals. In fact, she loses out when that cash bypasses the league that pays her bills. Prominent insiders finally started grabbing the mic to point out this dangerous imbalance. They weren't attacking Eala personally. This wasn't a hit job on her character. Everyone knew she didn't build the system, she was just winning the game. The rage was aimed squarely at a broken structure and leaders too slow to fix it. Analysts started drawing scary comparisons to other leagues that collapsed under similar weight. When the player becomes bigger than the game, the whole financial model tips over. The superstars rake in fortunes while the rest of the locker room stares down bankruptcy. You wipe out the middle class of the sport, and you kill the sport's future. The WTA needed to reinvent itself, and it needed to do it yesterday. They required a bold new model that celebrated star power without starving the collective. Could the current bosses pull that off? The stampede of exiting sponsors was shouting no. It was a brutal judgment on the league's failure to adapt to a new digital reality. And right now, that judgment was sharp, painful, and absolutely final. The legal verdict had been handed down, but the real drama was just beginning with an interview that no one saw coming. Occasionally in sports, an athlete cuts through the corporate noise with a truth so sharp and honest, it hits the public consciousness like a slap in the face. Alex Eala didn't just speak. She dropped a mic that sent shockwaves through the entire internet. In a clip that went viral faster than a match point winner, Eala tackled the financial realities of her career with a bluntness T was left analyst done. B stunned a C. She wasn't angry. She wasn't playing the victim or stirring up cheap drama. She was terrifyingly calm, delivering her message with a poise that hit harder than any screaming match ever could. She spoke of a burden heavier than trophies, the duty to represent the Filipino people, Southeast Asia, and every young girl who looked at the screen and saw her own reflection in a star struggling to balance commercial survival with cultural honor. She demanded that her worth, her massive, authentic cultural impact, be recognized on terms that matched the real world, not the old rulebook. And then she delivered the line that froze the industry in its tracks. With surgical precision and zero bitterness, she pointed out that the women's tour was never built for players like her. It wasn't designed for stars whose value comes from cross-cultural devotion, rather than just a ranking on a spreadsheet. It ignored athletes whose connection to the fans completely bypassed the traditional gatekeepers. Players who just by existing shatter the old assumptions of who gets paid and why in pro sports. The quote went supernova instantly. Sports news outlets were scrambling to cover it within the hour. Marketing gurus were dissecting her words like they were studying a new religious text. Fan bases across Southeast Asia didn't just watch, they roared back with overwhelming pride. Global tennis forums turned into battlegrounds, sparking millions of comments, debating fairness money and the broken system. But the true power of the moment wasn't in the conflict. It was in the undeniable logic. You couldn't dismiss Eala as a naive kid or a greedy rookie. She was citing hard facts about the industry's structure that were accurate, verifiable, and echoed the exact concerns insiders and economists have been whispering about in backrooms for a decade. Hearing a 19-year-old dissect the business model with such deadly clarity was absolutely mind-blowing. The WTA responded with their usual sluggish pace. When the official statement finally dropped, it sounded defensive, like a guilty party covering their tracks. Critics noted that a strong leader would have listened. Instead, the organization tried to dodge the issue. The difference between Alex's cool grace and the organization's clumsy panic just made the world take her side even faster. Online, the legions of fans in the Philippines and beyond turned this news cycle into a full-blown cultural movement. The interview clips racked up hundreds of millions of views. Hashtags with her name stayed glued to the top of the trending lists for days on end. Major news networks that usually ignore tennis were suddenly running primetime features on the story. Through the chaos, Alex stayed in her lane, gracious, focused on the ball, while the suits scrambled around her. That quiet confidence said more about her character than any speech could. It proved she was the real deal, making her even more irresistible to the mega brands lining up to sign her. Now, one burning question hangs over the entire sport. Is this just a moment, or is it a revolution? Alex Eala didn't declare war on the tour. She just outgrew their box. Money follows the truth. Fans follow the heart, and an archaic system just got lapped by a teenager carrying the hopes of a nation on her back. The metrics don't lie. Sponsors walking away from the old guard aren't guessing. The ground has shifted, and the game will never be the same. If this story fired you up, smash that subscribe button right now because history is being made on the court, and you won't want to miss a second of it.